Welcome to the Girl I Dare You podcast, a podcast created for dare divas like myself who have no problem embracing who they are while being challenged to become mentally, physically, and emotionally secure. I'm your host, Naishia, but you can call me Peaches, a certified dare diva here to dare you to be the absolute best version of you there is. Hey, Dare Divas, and welcome to the Girl I Dare You podcast, episode number 3. I'm so excited. We are continuing our series on mental health. And today I have a very, very, very special guest with me, another certified Dare Diva by the name of Layla, who's going to help us dive more into the conversation about mental health and bridging the gap between ministry and mental health in lieu of some of the sudden deaths of our fellow Americans, such as Regina King's son and even our own Miss USA, Christy Chesley Christ, who committed suicide recently. I thought that it was so important to dive deeper into this conversation. Our last episode is now streaming on all podcast platforms as well as YouTube, but we want to make sure that we don't stop on such a critical topic like suicide prevention. We will be providing information at the end of this podcast. If you are having thoughts of depression, anxiety, or even suicide, we will be providing information for you to be able to gather that information and get the help that you need. But without further ado, I don't want to keep her waiting any longer. Please help me welcome my guest, Layla. Hi. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Listen, I'm excited for you to be here. Listen, as I was telling you before we started, I have seen you operating in ministry, and you carry yourself with such a grace. And when I seen you singing and everything, I'm like, wow, she's so beautiful. She's so poised. She's so graceful. And I was so inspired by your ministry. And this past November, I happened to be scrolling through social media, as we always do, because I unfortunately missed your live recording. But I seen something. And I don't want to give them too much without you telling us. But first of all, tell us a little bit about Layla. Just tell us about you.
Oh, there's so many layers. But no, I was born and raised in the church, 4th generation Kojic, that whole Pentecostal background. So yes, I'm a church girl at heart. I also have a finance degree from Oakland University, Team Grizzlies.
Awesome.
Yes. So I do believe in God and education. I'm very heavy in that. But what else about Layla? I'm just a determined person. I'm a hard worker. I have strong work ethic. I've been through a lot of things, but I think the one thing that sets me apart from others is the heart that I have. Yeah. And I believe that's like the reason as to why the enemy has done so many things to me to try to taint my heart. But thankfully, thank God for Jesus and the Holy Ghost that I didn't allow him to taint my heart and to taint my mind. And I still have a sense of purity and innocence about me when it comes to ministry and dealing with people and things of that nature. So I believe in loving everybody. Like it's no point of harboring issues or feelings or anything. Like that's not going to benefit you anything at all. So I strive to always be pure with my intentions and my motives with people, and that's really basically me in a nutshell. I mean, awesome. I sing, I preach, I do a lot of things. I'm very multifaceted, so.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are, which is so awesome. I love to see a woman who has not been confined to one box, but who has expanded herself and really reached beyond her capacity and went for her fullest potential. And as you said, you're multifaceted in so many different areas, your education, your ministry, and like you said, just your heart, which is sometimes a gift in itself, just to have a good heart. And what would you say is can you give us a little insight on the importance of bridging that gap between ministry and mental health?
Oh my goodness. It's definitely a parallel with it. It goes hand in hand. I've experienced firsthand the detriments or the consequences of not being aware of mental health while being in ministry, because we were talking about this a few minutes ago, how we as leaders, we take on so many people's attitudes, people's burdens, people's problems on top of our own personal issues. And then on top of that, we deal with things in the church as well. And then if you have your own business, there's so many different areas that we have to focus on as leaders. And I experienced firsthand the detriments of not having awareness of that, because it's, if you don't have someone to talk to or someone to confide in or someone that can just check on you, it can just cause you to just feel overwhelmed, and then you feel like you're just about to run into a brick wall.
Right.
And that's where I have been there like multiple times. I've experienced burnout in ministry before, years ago. I've experienced depression. I've experienced suicidal thoughts, lack of confidence, like, loss of, not loss, but lack of identity. That's even a part of not being healthy mentally as well, when you don't know who you are. And so I really believe that in today's time, there is a huge gap, and I feel like there's people who want to try to bridge that gap, but then a lot of us, because the church really don't talk about it as much, we tend to be like, okay, where do we start?
Right.
How do we start to bridge this gap?
Right.
And so I'm actually thankful for this podcast, because this, I believe, is one of the ways for us to start bridging that gap.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure. So
I agree, because as you said, I've experienced too, just being in ministry and being burnt out. But because we sometimes are just going, and there's this misconception that, well, if I have church and Jesus, then you don't need therapy, or why would I be going? I'm going to pray about it. But you can't just pray. You sometimes have to do the work to make sure that we're actually exercising our faith. Yes, I have faith that I'll have a sound mind, but what are you doing to make sure that you have a sound mind? And just because you have faith don't mean that you don't have experiences that contribute to your depression or anxiety or low self-esteem.
That's right. The Bible talks about where Jesus tells the disciples to watch as well as pray.
Yes.
So what are you doing in your watching? What are you doing during that time? Like, yes, we could pray to God, and this isn't us taking away the effects of prayer.
Right.
We understand that prayer changes things. We always hear, pray until something happens. But outside of that, the Bible also says faith without works is dead. So what else are you doing in conjunction with prayer and faith?
Right.
Occupy until he comes. Okay, let's look at a different aspect of that scripture. Like, yes, when we read that scripture, we reference it to the rapture, but let's put it in a different context. Occupy until he comes to your situation, till he gives you your solution. What are you doing to occupy that time? Are you just going to sit and just be like,
and be idle?
Right. Or are you going to actually do something about it? And I really feel like that's where the disconnect is with a lot of people, especially a lot of people in the church, a lot of traditional-minded people. And I can talk on this because I was this way as well. Even though I'm young, I had a lot of traditional ways of thinking, based on my foundation. I don't take my foundation for granted, but there are some things that, I wish, could be more developed with the traditional things. But I would always just be like, I'm just going to pray. I'm just going to fast.
Wow.
And there were things that I would pray and fast about, and I would see that it didn't happen. Let's be real.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't receive
because everything you
outcome.
pray for does not come to pass, especially not when you want it to.
Yeah. And so those moments actually challenged my faith in God in those moments, because I'm like, okay, I was taught pray and fast. If I consecrate, push back my plate, God's going to come through. And there were certain instances where I felt like God didn't come through. And so that, played on my mental as
Wow.
well, because I'm like, wait, God, you didn't come through.
Right, especially when you
like I was expecting you
serving.
to. Exactly.
Especially when
I'm
you
paying my
serving.
tithe,
Like,
and I'm not paying 10%. I'm
right.
giving more than 10%.
Right. I'm giving my tithe and my offering,
Yes. Yes. So
Wow.
I really believe that there is a disconnect when it comes to prayer. It's a misconception that that's all you need is Jesus. But my thing is, you know, Jesus wouldn't have put it here for it to be available for us if it wasn't needed.
And that's what I always say.
Yeah.
God uses people.
Absolutely.
He uses people, and the blessing or the help that you may need may come in the form of a person who just happens to be a therapist, who happens to be a doctor, who happens to be into psychotherapy. And as I was speaking with someone on our previous podcast, that there's not just one type of therapist.
Right.
There are therapists for many different reasons. And we walk around sometimes acting as if we are inhumane because we work for the supernatural, but we are natural beings and we still have feelings. We still have issues. And I find it more so that the people in leadership are dealing with mental illness the most.
Yes, because of that.
Yeah.
Everyone expects them to be superhuman.
Exactly.
Superman, superwoman. That's actually where my issues stemmed from as well. Because everyone, they would see, oh, Layla, she's church girl, she's holy, she's sanctified, she's a singer, and so I always had this mentality like, okay, I can't let anyone see me in my rough moments. I have to keep this persona up.
Because now they have an expectation.
Exactly. And the moment you fail to meet their expectations, then things fall apart, and then eventually their blood is on your hands because of their expectations that they placed on you. And it's a lot of unrealistic expectations placed on leaders, and I'm sure
in the ministry,
you see that firsthand all the time.
Yeah,
and when I was serving as pastor recently, I always told the members, I said, listen, I am human just like you. I don't want you to put me on this pedestal. I mean, still give honor to where honor is due. But
absolutely.
Please know, I am not God. I am not Jesus, nor do I want to be. Nor do I want to be. And so I believe that if leaders be transparent in that regard and letting people know, like, yeah, I'm not perfect,
right.
That will help. I believe that will help other people to see, like, okay, yeah, let's not really put those unrealistic expectations on our leaders, So, yeah.
How would you say would it be an effective way for leaders to come together and say, listen, we believe biblically, but this is how we need to go about dealing with the people in our congregation who are literally dealing with depressive thoughts? Because sometimes people praising and we praising, but when we get home, we ready to either drink or smoke because we're trying to get rid of our problems because we have good church, but we're not transforming our minds. We're not being delivered from those thoughts for real. And I think that that's what's happened so long, is that we go on Sundays and we have great church. We have good services. On Wednesdays, on Bible study, we're getting good word. But we're not doing a check on the mind. And saying, okay, but what in your past could be causing you? Are you dealing with insecurities? Are you dealing with low self-esteem? Because those are feelings we can't praise our way out of. And we've got this misconception of just worship, just praise him, just shout. And all of those things are going to eventually go away, and it's a feeling. But then when you get home, you're not fulfilled. You're not happy. What is a good way to say, listen, is there even a safe place in the church for us to go with that?
That is a good question. I think, let me see how I'm going to say this. I have seen churches, put together seminars for mental health awareness. And I've seen, like, the response of those seminars, and let's be honest, people for whatever reason don't want to go to seminars. I don't know what it is, but it's like if it's something informative, not too many people respond to it. So I think personally, one way that would be effective is if preachers include practical teaching in their sermons.
That's good.
I think that would definitely help a lot. Like, yes, talk about the supernatural, talk about miracle signs and wonders, because we still believe in that. But then somehow segue practical teaching as well.
Yeah.
And I think that would be a good start. And then just, I mean, we could still do seminars, but my prayer is that the response to, these seminars that are being created, that the response like grows, because, let's be honest, there are people that are aware of mental health issues, but then people really don't do anything about it. It's something that people shy away from dealing with.
Can I ask you this? And the reason I bring this up, I hope it's safe to bring it up. I'd seen in your previous recording, right before you went into a song, and the only reason I bring this up, audience, is because I believe that testimonies validate our ministry. I believe that you can do ministry, but when you have a testimony, it validates why you do ministry.
Sure.
Some people can just sing because they're just gifted, but there's others who sing because God has truly brought them through some things. Yeah. And in this moment of your recording, you touched on the fact that you had tried to commit suicide 3 times.
Ooh.
And the chills that went through my body, and I wasn't even in the room, but the chills that went through my body when you expressed that. Was there ever a time that you felt that you couldn't go to the church, even though you were in the church?
Oh, yes. Plenty of times.
Wow.
Plenty of times. Thank you. Sorry, I'm already, listen, I'm a crybaby, y'all.
It's okay.
Y'all bear with me.
It's okay.
But, there were plenty of times where I just didn't feel like I could confide in people in the church, because I've always preached on faith. And so my fear was, if I went to someone in the church, they'll probably look at me as a person who lacks faith or someone who's hypocritical. And that played on my mental so much, because I'm like, I don't want to be a hypocrite. I don't want to preach one thing, but then I'm feeling something else, and this is that and the other. But when I started going to therapy last year,
congratulations on that, because that's a great step to make.
Yes.
That's an amazing step to make, to go to therapy.
Thank you. Oh, no, you're fine. When I started going to therapy last year, and the lady that I go to, her name is Dr. Cheryl, and she's a pastor herself. And she was basically just letting me know, like, no, these are natural feelings. And the reason why God sent his son to earth is so that way he could understand how we feel. It wasn't just for him to die for us. No, it was also for him to understand how we feel at times. And when I fully became aware of that, I didn't feel as bad as to why I felt the way that I felt about the things that I was dealing with at that time. And so being more aware of that and embracing those emotions and stuff, yes, I felt a little more comfortable, but at the same time, it's still, was like, there's some things with the church I wouldn't share, but yeah, and I feel like a lot of people feel like they can't go to the church for whatever reason, and we're supposed to be the hospital. We're supposed to be the safe haven,
right? So
my question that I have been asking myself for like the last year is like, okay, where is the disconnect? How come people don't feel safe to come to the church? What is it that we're doing, or what is it that we're portraying that's causing people to not feel comfortable to come to us?
Yeah, because I think
as a whole.
Right. I think what happens is, like we say, church should be like a hospital, but everybody's portraying to be doctors.
Key word is portraying.
No one is willing to be the patients. Everybody wants to be the fixers. And we think that because we're anointed, that we can't be human.
Yeah.
Because we're anointed, we can't get depressed. Because we're anointed, we don't deal with anxiety. Because we're anointed, ain't no such thing as suicidal thoughts. And there is a high number of people in leadership and ministry who have had the thoughts of suicide.
Yes.
And have dealt with heavy depression.
Yeah.
I heard the term in this recent situation with Miss USA, Chesley Chris, that she was dealing with high functioning depression.
Very common.
Where she's going, and putting on the facade that everything is okay. And because people think that, oh, she was so beautiful and she had everything going for herself, that she didn't deal with depression.
That was me. That was me. I was the kind of person where I would exert my energy elsewhere so that way I wouldn't think about it. And so I kept myself busy, but I finally had like that breakdown moment. And I talked about it a little bit in my live recording, but this particular day, I literally felt myself going crazy mentally. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what's happening. Like, I was starting to like hallucinate. Like, it was like I never experienced this ever before. And I attempted to commit suicide 3 times.
In that same day?
In that same day.
Wow.
In that same day.
Because most people would think that it was 3 different occasions.
No, it was that same day. And I picked up the phone to call a mental institute. God literally stopped me, like, in the middle of me dialing. And he said, I'm coming to renew you. I'm coming to restore you. I'm breaking the barriers in your life because I have so much more in store for you. Don't do this. And those lyrics, those words that he gave me became lyrics for a song that I wrote, which I'm coming out with my single in a couple weeks.
Yes.
Quick plug.
Shameless plug.
Quick plug right there.
I'm okay with it.
It's called So Much More. And so those words that the Lord spoke to me just resonated with me. And anyone that follows me on social media, I try to encourage. I used to do Facebook Live videos. I'm going to get back into that and, preach on there as well. But I would make posts and statuses and little, like, mini vlog videos. And so I was going to post on social media, and the Lord was like, no, this is for you. Write a song. And the song came about, and that was actually one of the ways that helped me deal with suicide and get my mental health together. God used my gift to help bring me out of that.
Wow.
He really did.
Wow. That's a tagline.
That's a tagline. He used my gift to bring me out of that place that I was in. And not only that, the reason why there's so many leaders and people in high places that deal with high functioning depression is because they don't do what I did last year. What I did last year was I took a complete sabbatical from everything. I was going through a divorce, and during this time when I was dealing with the suicidal thoughts and the depression, I was like fresh into it. And there was so many different things going on, and I stopped going to church. I didn't tune into a live or anything that had to do with church. I didn't want anything to do with it because in my mind at the time, I'm like, you know what? This is the very thing that has brought me to this place anyway.
Wow.
Things that I was dealing with within the church, And so I literally took a 3-month full sabbatical. I was in full-time ministry, but when I went through the beginning part of the separation and going into the divorce, I moved back here. I didn't have a job. Wow. Prior to that, I had a 6-figure job. I gave that up for full-time ministry. And so when I came back here, I didn't have a job. I didn't have my own vehicle. I didn't have my own place. I literally started from ground zero.
Wow.
Like nothing.
All while going through depression.
Yes.
Wow.
And I have my daughter with me.
Wow.
So, you know, that was one of the reasons, or one of the things that caused me to have suicidal thoughts and depression as well, because I'm like, okay, here I am. I am a degreed woman. I'm this person in ministry, but I'm starting back at ground zero. And so that made me feel a kind of way. I'm like, hold on.
Felt like you had hit rock bottom.
Yes, literally.
Wow.
But I'm like so thankful I took that sabbatical. The very moment I moved back here, there was an incident that had occurred, and literally 2 days later after that incident, I started going to therapy.
Okay.
Therapy.
So you believe in therapy and Jesus.
Listen, yes, it will get you through.
Yes.
It will get you through. So therapy and taking that sabbatical and, like being more involved and just diving into my gift really like brought me through that time.
And you birthed the music after the depression.
Yes.
After the
some of it during.
Thoughts. Yeah.
Some of the songs was birthed during those moments. I remember there was one song that I wrote, and I went back to my house that I had in Ohio to pack the rest of my things and pack my daughter's things. And the Lord gave me this tune. It's going to be on the album, y'all. It's called Believe. And
is that streaming now? Is it streaming now?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Not yet.
Y'all be on the lookout for that.
Be on the lookout.
Be on the lookout for that.
But yeah, like I was like packing my things, and it was already a lot for me to process emotionally, me packing my things and packing my daughter's things. And the very thing that helped me it was just singing. And so the Lord just told me, like, hey, just record. Anytime you have words come to your mind, or anytime you have like a tune that comes to your mind, record it in your voice notes. I don't care how crazy it sounds, record it. And
so your gift became a part of your therapy too.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And so that's one thing I would definitely like encourage people to help deal with, like the mental health aspect. Whatever you're passionate about, whatever brings solace or peace to you, definitely dive into that. When it comes to mental health, you have to be selfish to a certain extent. You have to be selfish.
Can you dive a little deeper into that?
Yes.
Because there is a thing of people don't understand that sometimes I need this for me. Yes. And it's not personal. It's not that I'm trying to neglect or negate away from anybody else, but sometimes you need those moments to be selfish. I was listening to someone one day, and they said it's not that you're being selfish, you're being self-full, because your cup runneth over. You need to be full first before you can give out to the world.
Yes.
So it's not being selfish, it's being self-full. I got to do this for me.
Right.
Because we are really running on drain, like we're drained because of everything else that everybody else is pulling from us.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit more about the importance of being selfish or self-full while you get yourself together? Because it's necessary.
Yeah. I used to be one of those people where I would be concerned about, what people thought, or like their opinions, or just being afraid of letting people down, because I'm always that kind of person that would help people, or I will always say yes, 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 barely telling people no. But when
I'm a people pleaser.
Yes,
I've been guilty of that.
Yes,
being a people pleaser.
But like I had to come to the realization that, okay, Layla, if you're not good to yourself, you can't be good for anyone else.
And sometimes being good to everybody else is self-sabotaging.
It is.
It's self-sabotaging because you're pouring out and you're pouring out and you're pouring out.
And people will allow you to keep pouring.
They're not going to tell you to stop.
They're not. There's very few people that will actually like be concerned about you, your mental, your emotional well-being. And so me being selfful.
Yeah.
I like that term. I'm still in that. Me being selfful, I really had to embrace that and just forget about like people's opinions and just say, you know what? I literally almost killed myself and no one really knew about it at that time. And I'm like, okay, well, since no one was really there in those moments, those low moments that I had, and it was just me and God, okay, it's gonna be me and God for a minute.
And that's how I feel sometimes.
Yeah.
That's how, and that's okay to feel that way. It's okay to feel that way because of, and I want to just dive on the suicide prevention just for a little bit.
Yeah.
Was there ever a time, did anybody know you were having those thoughts? Was anyone able to see it?
No, because I hid it so well. Like when you were talking about Miss USA and how she was dealing with high functioning depression and how people who deal with that, you know, it's very hard for other people to see that they're dealing with those things because, you know, she covered it so well. I'm that same kind of person. I'm the kind of person where I'm just like, you know what, you know, forget about my emotions. The show still must go on. You know, there's things I have to do. I have to fulfill this assignment. I have to do that. But if you don't really like tap into your emotions and just like really check in for yourself, that's very detrimental. So, you know, to answer your question, no one really knew that I had those thoughts until after.
Is there anything you wish you could have done before you had those thoughts? Anything you would have changed?
That's a good question.
What would you have done differently if you had the opportunity if you had an opportunity to reverse that experience? What would you have done?
That is a good question. I would have to say like being more aware of what was actually happening spiritually and naturally. Um, I feel like awareness brings a certain level of authority. And so if I was more so aware of what was actually happening to me mentally and also being aware of different resources, um, different connections that I did have. You know, if I was aware of those things and that, I feel like that would have helped me prevent that too because there were individuals that I had eventually reached out to and they were like, why didn't you reach out to us sooner?
Right.
And so now that I'm aware of those resources and connections that I have, you know, now that I know better, I do better.
Right.
You know? But yeah, if I had that awareness back then, that would definitely like change the game.
Wow.
And I would have went through it a little bit differently. But I don't regret the experience that I've had to endure. And I know people probably looking like, are you crazy?
No, I don't because I don't look at you that way because I've seen the fruit out of it.
Yeah.
I've seen the fruit from it. And as I said, your testimony validates your ministry. And the ministry that you have it's literally like, no, I'm not doing this for show. I'm not doing this to be cute. I'm not doing this to be famous. Like, I'm doing this because I've literally been covered by God. And it, like you said in your live recording, you could have been here for my funeral.
Yeah.
And when you said that again, the chills that I had in that moment was, we don't realize how many people have fought for a moment. We devalue people so much.
Yeah.
And we take people for granted. And you don't understand the fight that they went to be present in the moment.
Yeah.
To think that there would have never been this opportunity. You know what I'm saying? Had God not stopped you.
Yes.
Had that moment not come between, like, literally you were in the moment between literal life and death. You know, and I can't even imagine as a mom looking back at that thinking, oh my God, that feeling had become so heavy on me that every other feeling sometimes, because I think people can be selfish sometimes and think that, well, you didn't think about me. And it's like, I didn't think about me.
Right, exactly.
Like,
exactly.
were you not thinking of everything you had to lose? Like, no.
No. In that moment, I'm not thinking about anything.
Exactly.
I'm just trying to figure out, okay, should I kill myself or should I live? That's
Right.
literally where my headspace was at, you know?
Literally. Because
Yeah.
I'm not feeling, it's almost an outer body experience.
It is.
It's an outer body experience of between on, if I don't recognize this person in the mirror. I don't recognize this person, and I don't know how to find the person who I'm supposed to be. And a lot of times it's because of that high functioning that we're constantly going and going and going, that we've lost sight of who we are.
Yeah.
You know, and when you said that, you know, those people who were live in that recording could have been in your funeral, I think there's just something else just kind of took over me for you in that moment. Mm-hmm. Like, wow. We take people for granted. Yeah. We walk past them sometime and we really don't know what they're dealing with. We really don't know what they're going home with. And we think because they're functioning and they look good and they're beautiful and they're happy, that they're filled with joy and that they don't have those thoughts. Yeah. What would you tell a person who has those thoughts of suicide right now? What would you tell them?
Oh, so many things. Pray for sure. I'm an advocate for prayer, and try to see God in that moment and seek help. You never know, like, who you're connected to that actually really, like, cares enough about you to help you. And so don't be afraid to reach out. And I know a lot of times we can be filled with pride, because I dealt with that myself. Pride, you know, like, oh, I don't want to look this kind of way, or I don't want to, you know,
or trust issues.
Exactly.
When if you've ever been exposed, or if you've ever had an told someone a secret, and that secret got out, it's like, I ain't telling nobody this one.
Yeah, and I was dealing with that a lot too, and that was one of the reasons why I didn't seek out help as quickly as I should have. But that's definitely, like, the main things I would encourage someone that's dealing with suicidal thoughts. Like, get a hold of it now and seek help and seek God. Yeah. Seek help and seek God. Yeah. That's really the only advice that I can give. And one other thing, like I said a couple minutes ago, whatever your passion is, if you have a gift, if you sing, or if you write, or if you like to color. I mean, I know that probably seems elementary, but sometimes that could bring about peace and serenity. Yeah, you know, whatever that thing is that makes you feel good and at peace, definitely invest in that. Definitely invest in that and dive into that. Put all of that negative energy and switch it into something positive.
Wow, I think that's so critical, because I think that there's more people, especially, and I was even saying this in the last episode, especially after COVID, especially after quarantine, like staying in the house. Look, like some of us can't stay in the house when we not on lockdown. Yes,
it was like so many deaths. So I know that was causing a lot of people to just go crazy.
Yeah.
Because we're like, wait, we haven't seen this many people die in this short time span. So, yeah.
Wow. I thank you so much for your testimony. And I think that beyond what you've shared today, that your ministry in a whole is going to help so many people. There are so many people who need to hear the story after the fact. It is so hard to hear about someone committing suicide. Yeah. It literally, let me ask this before we wrap up. Did the news of anyone else committing suicide have an effect on you?
It did. Anytime I hear about someone committing suicide, or even like attempting, it always brings me back to where I came from last year. And all I can do is just be thankful that I'm still alive, that I didn't follow through. But then my heart goes out to those families of the people that actually followed through with committing suicide. And yeah, I thankfully I wouldn't say that it's a trigger. I believe that I'm in such a place of wholeness and and being healed in that area to where like I don't have any triggers with I don't deal with the triggers of that anymore. Um, but it does hit my heart a little differently because I'm a suicidal survivor.
Wow.
Like I literally survived,
Right.
and so my heart just really goes out to those families,
Wow.
and just it just goes out to them, and I'm like praying for everyone that has either dealt with a family member or a friend that has committed suicide, or of someone that has committed suicide. Like my heart and my prayers go out to each of you all. Like
Yeah.
it's a very serious,
Yeah. It's very,
serious
very
thing.
sad. It's very, very it's one of those things that when you hear about someone like that or that has committed suicide, it's like you sink
Yes.
thinking, what could someone have said or done in that
Yeah.
moment to
How
prevent?
could we have saved
How
them?
could we have saved that
Yeah.
person? And you know, I think that there's also a discrepancy or a confusion about what suicidal is and what having a suicidal thought is.
Mhm.
Because just because I had a thought don't mean I'm suicidal. In the moment where that day where you almost did, when you tried to commit suicide 3 times, and I don't know if you want to go into what you did to try to do that. If you don't, that's perfectly fine. But was there an event or anything that happened that place, or was it a series of things happening or a series of emotions happening to lead up to that day?
It was definitely a series of things that led up to those moments because I literally felt like hell was breaking loose around me. And I felt out of control.
Wow.
And I'm not going to say I'm a control freak, but I do like to have a sense of like, okay, I need to know this, I need
Right.
to know that, and at the moment I feel like I'm completely out of control, like it does something to me.
Right.
And so it was a series of events, like I shared earlier, divorce, and there were a lot of events that was transpiring from that. And
even your spouse didn't know at the time. Your spouse at the time didn't know you were having these thoughts.
I expressed it, but because of where we were in the marriage, it wasn't taken seriously, really.
Yeah.
And so, no knock to him. I'm not trying to
Understood.
badmouth anyone, but that's just what it was. And so, yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot, but thankfully, I made it out. I made it out.
Wow.
But I just remember the times where like one of the attempts was me like literally like trying to find like a sharp enough knife to just start slitting, and I actually did slit a little bit, but then I was like, no wait, this is too painful. No, like for real, these are my thoughts. I'm like, wait, this is too painful. I don't want to die this way. And so another attempt was me driving, and I was literally about to just crash into a median.
Oh my.
Like I was driving 100 miles per hour, and I was literally like, okay, I had the thought in my head, like, go ahead and just crash. Nobody's gonna miss you. Nobody's like, those thoughts are real.
Those thoughts are real.
Those thoughts are so real. And then I actually attempted to do it, but then right when I was attempting to do it, there were like a line of cars in front of me on the freeway just slowed down. I'm like,
messing up the rotation.
I mean, seriously. I'm like, okay, this is not the way to do it.
Yeah.
And then I went back to my home at that time, trying to find a gun.
Oh, wow.
And I did find a gun, and I attempted to shoot myself in the head. And nothing, when I tell you nothing worked, nothing worked at all. Like,
Wow.
I'm laughing about it now because of just how God just literally blocked every attempt.
Wow.
And all I can just do is just say thank you. That's
Yeah.
my heart is just full of thankfulness and gratitude, because if I would have followed through with either one of those attempts, like it just
I can't.
I wouldn't be able to imagine now, like where everyone would be at, even my daughter, you know. So
Yeah. But like we were saying earlier, those thoughts are so dominant and they will overtake you, and you're not thinking of the causes and effects at the time because you're such in a dark place. You're in such a dark place, and I'm so grateful that God blocked it.
Yeah.
However, we know that because of what we've seen, that's not the fate of everyone.
Yeah.
So for those people who are like, I've either attempted suicide, I have suicide on my mind, or I know I have those thoughts of feeling in those dark places. I don't know how to pray yet.
Yeah.
I don't have a church yet. And I don't have a therapist I don't have a therapist right now. And God, and I need to hear from Layla what to do in this moment. What does Layla have to say to those people?
I would definitely say be selfish. Be selfish. And if you don't feel comfortable talking to someone, or if you don't know who Jesus is and you don't know how to pray, I would definitely say start with, going or diving into something that, again, you're passionate about, something that brings you peace. Because a lot of times when you're dealing with suicide, you're not at peace. And so the way to counteract that is to what? Find something that brings you peace. So that's definitely something that I would encourage someone to do. And let me just put this plug in here. When it comes to prayer, there's no set way of how to pray.
There you go.
The way how we're talking, you could talk to God like that. Let me tell you something. There have been moments, and this may be a little too raw, but hey, there were moments where I was praying to God, cussing, like, no, like seriously,
no, for
in
real.
those very low moments, because I really didn't have the words to say to actually properly, quote unquote,
you went to
pray
him
to
as
God.
you are.
As I was.
You went to him as you are.
I sure did. And I prayed, and literally those moments were actually like the moments where God quickly responded.
Yeah.
Which was so crazy, because I'm like, God,
because you know what
do
happens?
I have to cuss and do this just to get you to respond quickly? Like seriously?
Yeah.
But no, that's real, and that's the stuff the church really don't want to talk about.
Yeah, I call it this.
That might have to be another podcast.
Everyone needs a Gethsemane moment.
Man.
Like when Jesus went to the Garden of Gethsemane, he's like, listen, Lord, for real this time, though. Like,
do I have to do this?
Let me go. Like, if this cup shall pass, I'll gladly go. But only if your will, if it be your will,
right?
But I think that everyone needs a Gethsemane moment, where you can go to God and be your raw self, because He knows your heart anyway.
That's what God wants from us.
He doesn't want the church to you.
Yeah.
He doesn't want the church to you. He wants the you who really is crying out for him. He wants you to be your authentic self.
Yeah.
Because he can only bless the authentic you. He can only deliver the authentic you. If you are struggling with something, he knows what you're struggling with.
Yeah.
But if you come to him whole, what is he to heal you from?
Right. There's one thing that I always say, like when I'm leading worship, I always tell the people, yes, the Bible say they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. But the Bible didn't say they that worship him must worship him in perfection.
Right.
He's not expecting you to be perfect. And so I want to encourage everyone that's tuning in to this podcast that you don't have to be perfect to pray. You don't have to be perfect to talk to God. You don't have to be perfect even just to have a relationship with God. God sees your heart. And, even though people look at the outward appearance, God looks at your motives. He looks at your intentions. If you have good intentions and your heart is pure, with that, that's all he's looking for. That's really all he's looking for. Wow. So,
and thank you again. I can't thank you enough for being transparent, because I truly believe that your testimony can save a life. I do. I believe that your testimony can save a life, and I tell people this all the time. I didn't do this podcast for likes, followers, or fame. I literally did it because I want someone to be helped. Yeah. And if it helps one person, I think that we've done our job. Yes. If it motivates or inspires one person, I think we've done our job. But I don't want to talk so much about the suicide that we don't talk about the ministry.
Right, yes.
Tell us more about why ministry is so important to you. I know you said you were 4th generation Kojic,
yes,
and that you were raised in a church, but like, to Layla, what does ministry mean to you?
So, ministry has definitely been instilled in me from the womb, but having a different aspect of what ministry is now that I'm older and now that I've experienced life in a totally different way, ministry hits home for me a lot. And it's not just ministry, it's kingdom. Like, when we grasp the concept of what kingdom is, it causes you to look at ministry in a whole different arena.
Yeah.
Because it's more than just the 4 walls. There's so many different aspects of ministry that people can hit that it's a lot. It's a lot, but ministry to me is, I want people to see Jesus in me every step of the way, because, there's going to be people that won't step foot in a church. Right. They won't open up a Bible, but you'll be that Bible, or you'll be that church for that person, because we are living epistles. And so I always try to make sure that I show the love of Christ in every way, in how I speak, how I treat people, even how I think, how I conduct myself, and make sure it comes from a genuine place. I believe being genuine is ministry.
That's true.
Because there's a lot of people that's in ministry that aren't genuine.
Yeah. And that could be a reason why people don't feel vulnerable enough to come with their issues.
Yeah.
Because they don't feel like we're genuine. And it's such a stain on those who really do want to help, and those who are really authentic and actually dedicated to building the kingdom and helping those who want to find Christ.
Yes.
We have to be more like Christ. We have to be more accepting. We have to stop judging books by their cover. Right. We have to accept people for who they are, and allow people to truly come as they are and be okay with it. Yeah. Instead of thinking they don't look like a Christian, because we have this misconception that there's a certain type. Yeah. That you don't look a certain way, or you don't dress a certain way, so you can't possibly love God. But I truly believe that God can use anybody, absolutely, with any background, who has any sort of history, from any demographic. Mm-hmm. God can use anyone, if we give them the opportunity to, and if we know that God is a lover of all of us. Mm-hmm. And we have to stop thinking that we have the authority to think that they're not as anointed because of wherever they're coming from, whether it be history, background, or even lifestyle. Yeah. I think we have to make sure that we are more Christ-like and more accepting to those. And though we will teach people to be more like God, but like you said, people don't read the Bible all the time, but they will read you.
They will.
People won't go to church, but they'll definitely look at you.
Yes.
So being that example, and I think you're setting a great example, not only for women in ministry, but people in ministry, and especially young girls. Your daughter, you're an example for her, and you're an example for all of us who desire to be more like Christ. And I think the more that we are human, tell our testimonies, and be genuine about it, the more people will feel comfortable coming forth if they need to check in, which is the topic, the name of this episode. I'm so sorry. Dare to check in part 2. It is Dare to check in part 2, because I think that we need to check in.
Absolutely.
I think that we need a safe place to check in. So I always leave my podcast with an assignment and a dare.
Okay.
I call myself a dare diva because I don't like the word devil, of course. And I am a kind of a daredevil. Like, I'm one of those people, kind of an adrenaline junkie, right? So if you could dare someone to do one thing, what would it be?
In what sense? In what sense? Or what context?
In the context of being their best authentic self.
Do what makes you afraid.
That's good.
I was afraid to do my live recording.
I was dare you to do what makes you afraid. I gotta take that one. I gotta take that one.
Yeah,
that is so good. Yeah.
Because when you do that, it brings about such a level of freedom.
Yes.
When I got over my fear of doing the live recording, and I fully walked into being Layla, the artist. Prior to that, I never wrote a song.
Wow.
Never did. But when I fully accepted that and embraced it, and I got over my fear, like, the creative juices just flowed. Like, I'm already working on songs for my second project, and I'm not even done my first.
This is a whole nother podcast, y'all. Because listen, that is the fear. Literally, is the enemy to our potential.
It is.
It's the enemy to our
ultimate
potential.
Ultimate hindrance.
Because if I can just get past the fear of whatever is holding me back, whatever I feel like, if I can get past that fear, then I can reach my fullest potential. And so many people don't reach it because we are afraid.
Yes.
Dare to do what makes you afraid. I'm getting that on a shirt. Okay, last but not least, an assignment. Our assignment today, I would like to challenge all of our Dare Divas to, which camera am I? I'm at this one. I would like to challenge all of my Dare Divas to find something that you are passionate about. Layla gave us a very, very good tool to use when we are feeling thoughts of depression, anxiety, or suicide. Find what you're passionate about and give that your best. Give that your ultimate best. And try to make that your source. Make that your crutch when you are having those thoughts. To navigate those thoughts back into something positive that actually fulfills you. I am your host, Nahisha. Of course, you can call me Peaches, your certified Dare Diva. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Layla, for being on the podcast with us. We got to have her back.
Yes. Anytime.
Okay. Thank you. Check this episode out on all podcast platforms, including YouTube. Thank you so much for tuning in.